You're listening to Big World Network.
Steam and Sorcery, a transdimensional adventure starring Phineas Frakture and Sir Vlishgnath the Cleansing Light. Episode 1. Written by Joseph Gatch and Daniel Mitchell. Read by Fentress O'Ward. This adventure takes place after Season 8 of The Adventures of Phineas Frakture and after Season 4 of the Vlishgnath Chronicles. Alternative realities. An unlimited number of what-ifs. A concept hypothesized among the salons by some of the greatest thinkers. Endless possibilities of roads not taken, choices made, or discarded. What if? I never thought that the concept, one of speculation, would actually become a reality, and not by me. What started as a drive to create a new engine for transportation became a journey of epic proportions. It started with an occurrence. The engine, once turned on, would disappear, and then return once it disengaged. Then, if I kept in physical contact with it, a wave of nausea would overtake me, and suddenly I would be in a different, yet the same, place. As I released contact with the engine, another wave of nausea, and I would once again return to my own reality, shortly followed by the engine as it lost power. I eventually found that the engine, running on a principle of magnetism, could be tuned to various degrees of reality. This prototype, dubbed the Magnetotronic Reality Tuner, eventually was reduced to a size capable of being worn on a belt. Though it had a limit of 50 or so realities it could reach, it allowed me to move about freely in these new worlds, to explore the what-ifs that could have been. From the Journal of Phineas Frakture. I am making a return trip to my last port of call. Though I have never done so before, I couldn't leave the reality in good conscience. It seems that an alternative version of myself is not as nice as I am. When I arrived, I found that my doppelganger had veered from my path at an early age. Filled with anger, hatred, and an overzealous curiosity, he had tracked down Dr. Heisenberger in his underground lair and took over his practice, so to speak. With an army of Dolonites at his command, he quickly conquered the city and then the eastern seaboard. A vicious, tyrannical ruler, his atrocities were monumental, and he is on the verge of taking over the Western Hemisphere. My plan is fairly simple and straightforward. I have created a refined version of Dr. Melandi's bomb, much smaller, but much more powerful. I will travel to the location in my reality where my doppelganger resides in his reality, shift into his universe using the MRT, set the bomb with a 15-second delay, and then shift back out. He and his empire will be gone instantaneously. From the Journal of PF. Phineas packed the last of his equipment into his backpack, carefully inserting the Melandi bomb. Even though it was harmless until detonated, the thing still gave him shivers at how devastating it would be. Usually, he wouldn't pack so much equipment and weapons for a trip into an other world. However, knowing where he was going and what he might face was too much to risk going unarmed and unprepared.
"You know what to do if I don't return?" Phineas asked his automaton assistant.
Punch cards clicked and gears whirred inside the automaton's chest as it accessed the information. If you do not return within 2 days, your lab and all research is to be destroyed by incendiary devices, smashing, stomping, and whatever means are at my disposal until all is obliterated. Excellent. If all goes well, you will see me back before then. Hold down the fort. Phineas slung his pack over his shoulder and locked the door behind him as he entered the remains of New York. Placing a breathing mask over his face, he ventured out into the harsh winds. A small gyrocopter waited for him outside, which he flew to the harbor district, the point where he first defeated the Dolomite army in his reality. Looking around, he chose his spot, one where he wouldn't appear inside of a wall or anything else. Lightning flashed above, and clouds began to swirl. "Well, that came on fast," Phineas said to himself. Looking up again, the clouds turned a sickly shade of green and then purple, red, then yellow, swirling into a funnel cloud that reached down from above. Oh, crap! Phineas scrambled for the controls of the MRT just as the vortex engulfed him. He felt the wave of nausea as the magnetic field surrounded him. At the same time, the vortex reacted to the field, sending shock waves rippling back up the funnel. In a flash of light, both Phineas and the vortex were gone. As the midday sun shone brightly down into the meditation garden upon the marble effigy of Mythos, the wizened warrior deity, depicted as a bearded, elderly man, clenching a long sword in his hands and taking a vigilant stance, Sir Vlishgnath, the cleansing light, knelt in silent prayer. Clad as always in his family suit of armor, worn by his father, Sir Ronigus, the wrathful tempest before him, and with retribution buckled at his left side, his ornate angel-winged helm and the massive golden dragon scale that served as his shield both lay by his side. When his prayers came to an end, he quietly blessed himself, and upon buckling his shield to his left arm, he retrieved his helm, stood, and silently made his way toward the church entrance, so as not to disturb the clerics in their daily meditations. It was then, as he pushed through the doors, that he came face to face with the high priest. Hunched over slightly from age and beginning to shrink in height, Vlishgnath still carried himself with a deliberate sort of grace, the blue and white robes of the high priest sweeping along the ground as he approached the door. "Ah, Sir Vlishgnath, I was actually just looking for you." Smiling, Sir Vlishgnath bowed respectfully, speaking before he'd fully risen. "What can I do for you, Your Holiness?" Turning, Vlishgnath headed back inside, Vlishgnath falling in beside him and keeping pace, his white cape billowing gently behind him as they moved through the hallway. "I came to see how you were doing. I know the death of Sir Thundercleese has weighed heavily upon you, and Maximus as well." When Vlishgnath said nothing in response, instead lowering his head to gaze pensively at the ground, Vlishgnath nodded and continued. "We all miss him a great deal. His good-natured personality, his faithful devotion to the church, and even his great love of life." Chuckling lightly, Vlishgnath looked up to find Vlishgnath grinning back at him. Nodding slowly, Vlishgnath spoke. "He is in a better place now, for certain. Still, he was a very dear friend, and I will struggle with his loss." Gradually, Vlishgnath's grin melted away, and the high priest couldn't help but give a consenting nod. In truth, the entire church had been in a somber state ever since they returned from the Great Wood, carrying Sir Thundercleese's body in the back of Maximus's cart. A multitude of roses had been laid at the entrance of the Tomb of Heroes in his name by a staggering number of women from within the city, and even still, they would sometimes come into the church and light votive candles in his memory. The mess hall was a much quieter place without his great knack for storytelling, and his presence in the training yard was greatly missed as well. "Yes, well, it is in times like these that we must cherish the memories we have and not let ourselves fall victim to despair or regret. You have a wedding to plan, do you not?" With a sigh, Vlishgnath smiled, turning his head and looking over to Vlishgnath. "Indeed we do. King Theodric has caught wind of it as well, so I fear the whole city may soon be involved." "The man jumps at any opportunity to throw a party and bring out the wine. Remember the celebration he threw when St. Guy was beatified again after having been declared a heretic for so many years?" Vlishgnath laughed, nodding, as he replied, "Quite a lavish affair for a man who taught the virtues of a life of poverty. The city seemed to enjoy it a great deal, though." "Of course they did. Everyone ate and drank like kings, and I mean that literally. We are fortunate to have such a Pious king in such a prosperous city for certain. Just then, there came a rumble, the very walls of the church shifting slightly and kicking dust out from the mortared cracks, followed by a loud rush as if the wind had suddenly picked up violently. Coming to a halt, the two stopped to glance at one another, then looking up to the roof of the cathedral as if trying to decipher what caused the sound.
Everyone around them had done the same, paladins and clerics alike, as the sound continued to grow in intensity.
The sunlight that had streamed through the stained glass windows a moment earlier was now noticeably absent, the interior of the church growing dark as if night had suddenly fallen in the middle of the day.
Taking off in a full-blown sprint, Vlishgnath raced to the front doors of the church, his white cape flailing wildly behind him as he dipped and weaved through paladins and clerics as they rushed to the windows.
Without breaking his stride, Vlishgnath burst through the doors, coming to a dead stop on the steps of the cathedral as he gazed up into the sky. It was there that he saw it, the massive, swirling vortex that loomed over the market square in the center of Ascension. As clouds grew denser and blocked out the sun's rays, it grew darker until an abrupt flash of light briefly illuminated the entire area with an echoing boom that rolled across the outlying farmlands for miles to come. Then, just as abruptly as it had all began, the clouds began to disappear, and slowly the light of day began to reappear. Pausing for but a moment to ponder what he'd seen, Vlishgnath quickly pulled on his helmet, turned, and strode back in through the church doors, politely sidestepping a confused-looking Volgov. "Sir Vlishgnath, what has happened?" the high priest asked, his expression puzzled and slightly worried. "I'm not sure yet, but I'm going to find out. Where is Maximus?"
Music by Kevin MacLeod.
You're listening to Big World Network.